Tell us about your vision for what you call guardian cities.
I'm thinking of buildings so well constructed, they'll last 500 or even 1,000 years. After 10 or 15 years building these in large numbers, the overall costs will fall dramatically. Take the clothing industry as an example. Custom-tailored suits cost 200 or 300,000 yen, but mass-produce similar suits 10,000 at a time, and the cost drops dramatically to just 30,000 yen. I want to do the same sort of thing for construction. Our basic human needs are food, clothing, and shelter. Solving the shelter part will eliminate poverty.
Why did you choose the word guardian?
I mean something that protects, like a guardian angel. I imagine walled cities, impregnable to flooding, providing homes for 10 or 20, at most 50,000 people. They would offer complete protection against floods and storm surges. These cities would also be constructed to absorb and resist seismic shocks, providing shelter and protection from earthquakes. This would result from the design of the construction. I plan to patent these concepts with the aim of building such cities all over the world. This is a plan for a city of 10,000 people, about 100,000 square meters in area. This city is designed with an English theme. I want residents to feel like they're living in the UK.
I see a river.
Yes, the River Thames.
Of course. And there's the wall you talked about. So, much of the expense would be in creating the solid foundation?
Yes. And this London zone would be just one part of a much larger project. This plan envisages a number of such zones, covering an area the size of 2 central Tokyo districts. You can see it contains many cities with different characters. And on the edges here, we could have 2 private airfields for community passenger jets. It would be designed to last for 500 to 1,000 years. There would be lakes for leisure, sailboats, and water sports. The remaining land could be used for food crops or even things like strawberries. With residents cooperating to tend these crops, I'm sure they would be able to grow enough to feed everyone in the city in case of necessity. So if disaster struck and the surrounding land was flooded by rising water, the city could support itself with enough food and energy for a month or 2. A city like today's Tokyo would struggle to provide energy, water, and sewage for 2 weeks. That's just not viable. Our cities would be self-sufficient, resistant, and ready to survive anything. And instead of residents having to evacuate, this city could take in evacuees from elsewhere. That's my hope.
Would that also protect against pandemics, like the current virus?
I believe so. Of course, as we've found out, no one likes to live under constant rules and restrictions. But in the case of a virus like COVID-19, our city could rapidly implement regulations so authorities would know exactly who was living where and the condition of their health. The city would be protected against infections coming from outside like viruses and be able to ride them out. It could have a comprehensive system to protect care homes and hospitals and allow it to easily lock down precise areas in case of outbreaks. And as I said earlier, we'd be cutting construction costs to 1/3 of what we spend now. A saving of 2/3 leaves a lot of funds to pay for such measures.
And you said 10, 20, maybe 50,000 people?
50,000 would be the maximum.
That sounds like a very large project.
Yes, each city of 10,000 would require 330,000 square meters of floor space.
What kind of budget would be required? It would take a lot of innovation, too.
We need to prepare for that and persuade national and local governments to participate. In our model based on using 2 districts in central Tokyo, the first cost would be purchasing the land required and buying up the buildings it currently contains. Of course, many of the original residents would use this buyout money to purchase themselves homes in the new city. So, taking everything into account, you're looking at a project cost of about 23 trillion yen. That's 23 trillion spread over 15 years, which is around 1.6 trillion yen per year. But this city would provide complete protection from disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis. And remember, these buildings will last for between 500 and 1,000 years. So, though you've spent over 20 trillion yen, you've created a city worth 100 trillion. And that's not all. Think about the floor area ratio for this city. You're familiar with floor area ratio? 100 square meters of building on 200 square meters of land gives a 50% ratio. Most residential areas are currently 30 to 50%, but we aim for 500%. Large office blocks usually have a 1,000% ratio. Half of that will feel very spacious, and that leaves us with around 90% of the land area for other uses. We could have woods, lakes, and farmland, too. A farm-to-table system could provide enough produce to feed the whole city. And if solar panels become around 5 to 10 times more efficient, the city could be self-sufficient in energy, too. That would provide a very large return on investment. If you're using less than 10% of the land bought for housing, there's plenty of space left. We could build new neighborhoods to attract residents from overseas. Selling such units at world prices could even recoup the initial 23 trillion.
I'm sure everyone would like to have such a place to live in safety, with peace of mind. You've told us a lot about the many benefits of your city, but wouldn't such a place be very expensive?
Well, the initial 23 trillion is a very large sum. But as I said earlier, the structures of this city would occupy only 10% of its area. Think about water, gas, and electricity supplies. With everyone concentrated in that 10% area, the water pipe network, for example, would be extremely short. Look at the city of Nagoya. In the densely populated center, space is used very efficiently. But out in the suburbs, utilities are 100 times more costly to install on a per-person basis. 1 million versus 10,000 yen per unit. Concentrating everything within a limited area brings really major reductions in cost. And administrative costs also fall significantly. This wouldn't be an expensive city to run by any means.
So these cities would be very desirable places for anyone to live?
Yes. For example, take a 100 square meter apartment in a 50-story Tokyo building. Today, that probably costs over 100 million yen to buy.
Right.
I think we could bring that down to more like 40 million. And of course, nowadays, most people buy their homes on a 35-year mortgage. But for buildings that last 500 to 1,000 years, you could get a 100-year mortgage. That would bring housing costs right down. In terms of our clothing, food, and shelter needs, we'd have completely solved the shelter part, eliminating poverty.
We'd be free from money worries.
That's right. When it comes to housing, at least. I was recently speaking to the president of a major Japanese construction firm. I mentioned my idea for buildings that would last 500 years. I didn't say 1,000 yet. And he said, that's no problem. We have the technology to build for 500 years. We already use concrete that will last 400 years, so it's all quite feasible. Japan already has the technology. It's just a case of using it to its fullest extent.
So your basic idea is that families would hand their housing units on from generation to generation?
That's absolutely right. What you just said has always been a key focus for me. In a building that will last for 500 to 1,000 years, I could imagine conversations like this between residents. Oh, you've only been here 200 years? My family has been here 500. Of course, you'd regularly renovate the interiors.
I'm trying to imagine buildings that last for 500 years. The cities of Europe are full of structures that have stood for a similar period of time, buildings that are hundreds of years old. Is that the kind of image you have in mind?
Precisely. Certain types of buildings tend to form the centerpieces of such cities. Buildings like palaces, temples, schools. A city like Oxford, for example, is almost nothing but old buildings. That's the kind of atmosphere I want to create. Of course, buildings from that period are not without their issues, but we are now able to create cities that solve those issues and will stay livable for 500 to 1,000 years, and in the process support their surrounding region.
So it's not just about buildings that will last. You plan to create cities where families will want to live for generation after generation?
That's right. In a 50-story tower, units in the upper stories could be built for 300 to 500,000 yen each, while fancier units lower down might cost 2 to 3 million to construct. And then we could do interesting things down on the first 2 stories. For example, I could imagine an area themed after the movie Roman Holiday. How does that sound?
What a romantic notion.
But good, eh? Doesn't it sound like fun? Something to enjoy for all ages. You could have Japan-themed areas too, like Matsumoto Castle, for example. Take a holiday in Japan or overseas anytime, all without leaving your city. You could have the experience of Barcelona right there. Maybe eventually go to Spain to see the real thing. And these could be built in cooperation with people from the actual places. Bring Spaniards to build your Barcelona, or work with New York on a New York zone. That would be ideal.
And you dream of implementing this idea around the world?
Yes. I'm always thinking on a global level. I'll give you an example. In Indonesia, they're talking of moving the capital to Kalimantan, an area famous as an orangutan habitat. Rather than developing that region, I personally think that they should consider keeping the capital in Jakarta. Historically, it has an advantageous location, and it could be rebuilt using our approach. That would avoid cutting down more of the rainforest, and as we know, such destruction is linked to the spread of new viral diseases.
Until now, most major cities of the world have simply grown in size as populations grew. Growth has never followed a plan. But now we really need to plan for sustainable growth into the future. Urban planning has to address that.
Absolutely. So that in 10, 20, 30 years, we can have 10 billion people all enjoying rewarding lives. We have to plan cities to achieve that, and that's exactly what I've been saying.
That will surely require very long-term planning.
For Japan, if we consider Tokyo, I think 15 years.
Only 15 years.
Yes, and about 30 years globally. By that stage, I think the world will have abandoned fossil fuels for 100% renewable energy. Oil may still be used in building materials, but it won't be a key source of energy. It will be a much cleaner world.
How will these cities of yours suit our aging society?
They will be wonderful places for seniors to live. Remember, if we save 2/3 on construction costs, all that money is available for other uses. We could use some of it on nursing care facilities, perhaps 3,000 square meters for a city of 10,000. Say you retire to a facility here, and your son's family lives here, and your friends are over there. What a pleasant way to live. People worry about retiring to remote facilities where they don't know anyone. Here, you're still right in your community. You'd have the comfort of living in a community that's like one big family. That would surely shorten the years needed for nursing care. If a person enters a home at 90 and lives to 105, that's 15 years of care. But with the support provided by a city like this, they could live to be 100 in their own home and spend just the last 5 years in care. That saves them 10 years of care home fees. By 2040, it's estimated Japan will be spending 24 trillion yen a year on nursing care. Add private fees, and that's 50 to 60 trillion yen a year. We could cut that by half or even 2/3 and provide a much nicer environment for seniors. As humans, we need clothing, food, and shelter. Shelter is the most fundamental, and these cities take care of that. I want to ensure people around the world will be able to live a good life at an affordable price. For Japan, that will involve 50-story living structures. But other countries, for example, developing economies, could take different approaches. Each approach would be part of a combined effort to transform our world. Think about what I said before about living in a virtual Rome or New York. Wouldn't that be a fun way to live? I believe we are born to enjoy life, and my core philosophy is to make that possible for everyone. Nothing would make me happier than to ensure happiness for everyone on the planet.